There's a story I've wanted to tell for quite a while about where Osgo came from. It's quite a long story, really, and quite a personal story too, and probably why I've not shared it as widely as I may have done. I think now is probably quite a good time to explain where Osgo came from, the motivations for doing it, and um, the hopes for its future and what it may do. So, as many of you will know, I'm a podiatrist. I came to podiatry as my third career, believe it or not. A number of careers. That's the way the world is now, isn't it? So, for those who don't know, I was a prison officer for a few years, and then I set up a promotions business, which was pretty successful, and then stumbled across podiatry when my wife Becky said to me, "You need to get a proper job at some point. You need a proper profession, and you need to do something that's going to have a really great future for it." So I discovered podiatry, like many people, by accident because I thought I wanted to be a physiotherapist or perhaps a dentist, and I discovered podiatry, and it genuinely caught my interest because it was clear that it was a niche profession, and that many podiatrists had a portfolio of work. So that was the initial attraction to podiatry. Becky, my wife, was a chemical engineer at the time and was having a jet setting lifestyle, working in Oman and Portugal on oil and gas plants. Um, so I went off and studied podiatry, fell in love with podiatry, and immediately, as is my want, set up a private practice, quite an ambitious private practice, a large building, multidisciplinary practice, and I always had the mantra that I wanted a business, not a job. And it's just kind of part of my makeup because I'd run businesses before. I knew that business floated my boat. It excited me. I like creating new things. And I always wanted some degree of stability. And I think that's perhaps, is there an inherent laziness in me that I want to know that things will be okay if I can't show up for work or don't want to. And I was chasing the dream of one day that I won't have to work as hard. And I think that was the initial motivation for starting off wanting to have businesses. So we set up the practice, and it was an enormous amount of work, as you would expect. But within a few years, it got to a place where it was very systemized, in no small part due to the attention to detail of Becky and her drive to make sure that process was looked at, because she was by profession a process engineer, and she was very, very obsessed with process and making sure that there were safety systems and feedback systems. Just like when you're designing some complex plant, she really believed that a business should have this complexity to it, in that it would have safety systems in place and to almost be as autonomous as possible so that the machine could be guided, but the machine could run on its own for as long as possible. So, as I said, within a few years, we got to this great place where the business was um, doing lots of things on its own and supporting our lifestyle, and allowed us to move out to the building we lived and worked in, and have our own separate home, and have our young boy Sam. And life was wonderful. It was really busy. It was really, that period of time when you've got your first little one, and work is really busy, and you're trying to cram in holidays and fun times, and you're trying to stay fit and healthy at the same time, and you really are kind of using up all of your resources to make it go. But on reflection, it was such a happy time, such a wonderful time. We then had a terrible tragedy. Um, and this tragedy, as some of you will know, was that we lost our baby daughter at a full term stillbirth for no obvious reason at first, um, and she died on the day she was due, and she was a really large, well developed 9 pound baby girl, Florrie. As you can imagine, this was the most testing time for Becky and I. It was an incredibly testing time, and it meant obviously that. that work and business took a back seat and certainly wasn't the focus. It was at this time there was a realization that we were kind of unusual in our situation because we came across other people in a similar situation having lost newly born children, or or stillbirths. And a lot of people, the impact this had on their work and their careers was enormous, to the point of some people being no longer able to work, and that affecting their housing, where they lived, their children's education. The cascade effect was enormous. Because we'd put so much time and effort into creating a business that could support us, we were we genuinely realized the value of what we had, is that we were able to take time out and just be together and not worry about our basic needs being met, financially, being able to eat and fund the home and the things that we needed to do. And yes, the business didn't continue to grow in the same way. The business took a different direction, but it really was there to look after us. And there was a realization at this point, just what value there was in us doing that. So there was a very, very dark time for us, personally, and an intense grief, and a very different experience for Becky, obviously. And we desperately needed something at this point to focus on and to create. And it was during this time where the concept of Osgo was formed, in that we wanted to create something that could act as a catalyst to allow people to sustain businesses, to something that could nourish them, something that could work, um, to release some of what we'd put into our business without wanting to sound like we had the answer. We felt that we had something really quite important that should be shared, um, certainly amongst the profession in first instance, so that people could have something, an insight into what can look after you. So a huge amount of the drive and the messages around Osgo are around protection, around making sure that you have adequate protection should things go wrong, whether that's, if you're unable to work, things go wrong, tragedies can happen outside, and they're never the ones that you predict for, but you can have some insurances and protections around it that mean if the worst thing happens, it just gives you some degree of comfort to be able to deal with the immediate aftermath. And we always had enormous optimism. And I think now when I reflect back, we put a huge amount of our personal energy and hopes and dreams that would have surrounded our new baby girl into driving forward, a new business and creating Osgo. And that did take, that couple of year period, all of our attention and hopes and ambition to to try and replace some hope into our lives. And it did that in abundance. And some of you may remember when we actually first launched Osgo at a conference in November of 2000 and let me get the year right, 2015. Becky was 8.5 months pregnant with our now beautiful little girl Bobby. And she stood on the trade stand, promoting this new brand, this new idea, this new concept, and just 2 weeks later gave birth to our wonderful daughter. So this is where Osgo came from, and for me, it's incredibly personal because to get something going and to create something of value and meaning, and to fight the fight against the naysayers, against the world, against all of the challenges it brings, it takes more than just an ambition. There has to be a genuine reason underneath that's part of your makeup and part of who you are. So hopefully this little video I've made will give you an insight as to why Osgo was formed and what its primary drivers were. And life does this to all of us, doesn't it? It throws a story at us that we don't always expect, but it also uncovers lots of your deep reasons about what makes you tick and what really does motivate you to do things and to make a change.